up guys, welcome back to the WRight Nurse. I am Lakeisha here and welcome to my channel. As you guys seen in the title, I will be discussing the top 5 nursing interview questions. If you would like to know what those top 5 interview questions are, please continue watching. So before we dive into the top 5, I do just want to give a few tips. If you haven't watched my video on how to land your dream job, you might want to watch that first because I give you all the tips and tricks to pretty much land the interview to get the job, okay? So you want to watch that before you watch the top 5 interview questions because it only makes sense. Okay, tip number 1, before I even start on the top 5, I want to say you want to make sure you get a list, like an extensive list of interview questions. They do not have to be all nursing related, but you definitely want to make sure that you have some behavior style questions in there, because I noticed with my nursing interviews and interviews for jobs that I had prior to nursing school, they like to use a lot of behavior style questions, so you want to make sure that you kind of get used to answering those. So what I did was create a list. I had maybe like 30 plus questions, and what I did was wrote out my answer to each question. That's like key. Write out your answers, you guys. You do not want to wing one of the most important interviews that you're probably going to go on. You don't want to wing it off the top of your head. By writing out your answers, you're able to, like, you know, get things in order. You kind of know what you want to say. So I definitely recommend writing out your answers. Alright, so let's get into this top 5. Alright, so first question that I was asked every time is the dreadful, tell me about yourself. Now, we all get these questions, and you're kind of confused on, like, what the heck do they want to know? Do they want to know about my personal life? Do they want to know my kids, my this, but they don't really care, honestly. What they want to know with this question is basically your work history or schooling that relates to the job you're trying to get. Make sure with every answer you give, it relates to the job that you're interviewing for. So for the tell me about yourself questions, I always recommend telling a story. So I know that sounds kind of weird to say, but let me explain. The way that I set this up was that I like to talk about the present, the past, and the future. So for the present, you will talk about your current job, your current schooling, or whatever that relates to that actual job. And then maybe you'll talk about some jobs that you have in the past where some of those skills actually pertain to the job that you're interviewing for. And then what I mean by future is saying, you know, what you look forward to with this job, or what do you plan on doing to contribute to this job. So to make it make sense, basically, I'll read out loud what I wrote down for this question as it pertains to me, so it can make more sense to you guys. So now I said, now with this, granted, I did write down my answers, but I also did like study, but I didn't say verbatim during the interview exactly what I have on this paper. I did talk about it in a roundabout way, so it may seem like I'm talking a lot, but honestly, once you get into the flow of things, you can answer this question in like less than 2 minutes. It just flows out naturally with practice. Okay, so I'm just going to read you guys what I said. So I said, I'm a motivated self-starter who really enjoys the hands-on and human aspect of our industry, particularly women and children. To me, there's nothing more satisfying than helping people out when they need it the most. Currently, I work as a patient care tech and safety companion here at so-and-so in the float pool department. I've been here for almost 2 years. I love the fast-paced, ever-changing environment. My assignments tend to change quite often during my shift. This has made it easy for me to adapt to any unit. I have received multiple Diamond Awards for my compassion, flexibility, and quick thinking. It has also equipped me with the ability to work in a team environment. Before working here at so-and-so, I worked as a loan servicing specialist and a social worker. Working in these roles have helped me build strong customer service skills. I am able to function and de-escalate high stressful situations. Being a social worker allowed me to work with diverse populations and to connect within the community. I am looking forward to continuing my career here at so-and-so and further developing my skills as a nurse. Outside of the hospital, I am an avid reader. I am also currently a member of the AWAN, Association of Women's Health and Obstetrics Neonatal Nurses. Outside of that, I also own my own online Etsy shop where I sell nursing notes templates to assist other nursing students. So I know I said a mouthful, But if you really listen to what I'm talking about, I talked about the present, where I worked. I even promoted skills that I have that will pertain to the actual job I was applying for, which was for labor and delivery. I even talked about some awards that I even received in regards to the position that I am, that will help me towards being a labor and delivery nurse. Now that was all the present. I talked about my past jobs as a social worker, and I also worked as a customer service representative. So these are all skills that I use, that I can use towards being a nurse as well, that I have gained from previous employment. And then for the future, I talked about my goals for working as an L&D nurse. I even mentioned some skills that I have that would really help. So for this question, you want to make sure you talk about the present, the past, and the future. Go in that order. I promise you're going to answer that question perfectly. The next question that you're asked in every nursing interview, hell, in every interview in general, honestly, what are your strengths and what are your weaknesses? So we're going to go with number 2, what are your strengths? So for this question, you want to make sure that you give like your best strengths that would be best for the actual job you're going for. So we're interviewing for nursing. You already know that, they really want someone that's a team player, because, working on a team in nursing is really important. Great communicator, great at prioritizing, strengths like that. Don't give like strengths that don't even pertain to the job you're interviewing for. It won't even make sense. So don't just say I'm good at this or I'm good at that. For the strengths and weaknesses, I always recommend elaborating. Yes, it's easy to say you're a good communicator, a team player, and you're great at prioritizing. Well, state what you have done in the past that made you great at prioritizing, and how has that helped you in your role, or how will it help you in a nursing role? Like, how does it pertain? You have to elaborate. I can't say that enough. Don't just give short blank answers and then wait for the next question. Now, I'm not saying that you need to ramble on with your questions, but you want to make sure that you tell a story. I would recommend looking over the job description that they have when you apply, to see some of the things that they're looking for. So you want to make sure that you play to those strengths. Alright guys, so question number 3. What are your weaknesses? So for this question, it's kind of tricky. Like, you feel like they're trying to trick you, like the interviewer. However, if you're prepared, you will not get tricked. Okay. So for this question, the number 1 thing you don't want to do is say you don't have any weaknesses, because they're going to look at you like you're stupid. Okay? Everyone has a weakness. Nobody's perfect. Everybody has something that they can improve on. So please don't get in that interview and talk about, I don't have any weaknesses, because they're just going to look at you like you're stupid. Okay? So don't do that. So tip number 2, do not pick a weakness that is an important skill to have for the job. Again, do not pick a weakness that's an important skill that you need to do that job, because that's like just talking yourself out of the damn job, honestly. Like, don't pick something that's really important, like an important skill for you to have, and you're talking about that's your weakness, and you get in there and they're just going to be like, next. Like, don't do that. Don't talk yourself out of the job, guys. Make sure you have like a weakness, but don't just make sure it's not important. Something that you actually need. Okay. Now, I know some people may say you're supposed to pick a weakness and, make it a positive one. I still believe that is true. You want to pick a weakness, but you also want to show, that you're either working towards it or trying to correct it, or you're working towards bettering yourself. I still recommend that. A lot of people say don't try to flip your weakness into a positive one. But let's be real. Like, honestly, you're not going to just be like, I'm not great at communication and leave it at that. Like, no, you got to come back and, try to state like, okay, even though I'm not a great communicator, I've been doing this, this, and this to work on that. Bam. So the next question that I got a lot, honestly, in every interview is, describe a time you had a conflict with a coworker. And with this question, it's kind of like, why do they want to know if you had, a conflict with someone? Like, why? But honestly, it's a few things they're trying to figure out when they ask you this question. So with this question, what they really want to know is, how do you handle conflict, and can you resolve it on your own? Granted, we are all adults, so this is actually an important question, and every employer honestly is going to ask you this. So the number one tip for this question is, please do not badmouth your old employer, a co-worker. Just don't badmouth anybody or anyone or anything, okay? That's not what they're really trying to figure out here. They're trying to figure out, like I just said, do you know how to resolve conflict on your own, and can you handle it? Because conflict is going to arise in any field that you work in. There's going to be a little riffraff because we're all human. So the main thing with this question is that I recommend is tell an actual story where you had a conflict. And again, I'm going to say it, you want to elaborate. So tell a story. Set the scene. You know, say where you were at, who you were with, where it was. Like, say a whole scene, okay? Set the scene. And then you want to make sure, the most important thing that you do with this question is make sure that you also take responsibility and accountability for the role you played in that conflict. You don't want to play the blame game. It's never cool. You definitely don't want to badmouth any previous employers, because honestly it only makes you look bad in the end, so don't do that. Alright y'all, so if you're still with me, thanks for hanging. I know I said a mouthful, but I promise you these questions are going to be asked, okay? And these tips will definitely help you. So tip number 5, our last, or not tip, question number 5, our last question. Describe a time that you provided effective patient teaching. Now this question, it may seem like, oh, just like a regular question where you can kind of just say, oh, I did this or whatever, blah, blah, blah. This question, you really want to play towards your skills, especially as being a new graduate nurse. You want to really like play up on your skills. So with this, I recommend thinking of a time back during clinical where you provided effective patient teaching. Now, as I've been saying throughout this whole entire video, you want to elaborate. You want to elaborate. You want to set the scene for them. So, for example, I described a time that I taught my patient how to do self-catheterization. He had urinary retention. And of course in the hospital we do a sterile technique, but I had to teach him the clean technique and the differences between the two. I talked about how I used the teach back method, which I did. I talked about how I gave him written instructions that were easy to read instructions, and I made sure that I not only showed him how to do it, but I watched him multiple times complete a self-catheterization on himself before he was discharged home. So I'm saying that what I said, but in the interview I said a lot more details than that, but something like that, like something that really plays up to that, because honestly, as a nurse, the most important thing we're going to be doing is patient teaching. Like, that is a major role that nurses play. Like, yes, we provide care, but the most important thing we honestly do is patient teaching. So you want to make sure that you really give a good example of when you had effective patient teaching. This is really important. You want to make sure you don't miss this question or mess it up, okay? Alright guys, well thank you guys for hanging in there with me with this video. I hope you guys do find it helpful. I will see you guys in my next video. Peace.